Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Inner Circle podcast. By way of introduction, I'm Anthony, and this is my co-host Michael. Michael, welcome.
Thanks, Anthony. Thank you very much. Very excited to get this second episode underway. In today's episode, we're going to be covering off on 3 different topics, and we figured we'd try and align those topics with an area of the business that we operate in. So the first topic is statement of information updates that we've got going on, obviously linked to the sales side of things. We're going to continue our conversation on the property management side of things from last podcast, but really focusing on some of these specific reforms that are coming through. One of them, which was announced not that long ago, which is a portable rental bond, and we'll cover off on that into the property management section. And then lastly, under the Owners Corporation section, we're going to talk a little bit about a VCAT matter that has caused a little bit of concern amongst the Owners Corporation industry and certainly got some media coverage over the last couple of weeks as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, so let's get into it.
Absolutely. There's been there's a bit been going on as well, just around the traps of. I think we'll just start. There's been a heap, obviously, that's happened, as I think we discussed in our first episode. There's so much that happens in the real estate space and Owners Corporation space over the course of even a week, let alone a month. But there was probably something that was pretty interesting that happened during the week that the RIV put on. Neither you or I were in attendance physically, but there was our office attended and sort of gave us some feedback afterwards. But did you want to sort of cover off on who was there and what was sort of discussed?
Yeah, so the RIV put on an event throughout the week, which I thought was really good, and I think they're getting better at organising these sorts of events where they're actually getting people that are important within the industry to come and talk to real estate agents about things that are going on. So the event was specifically for property managers to talk about the reforms that are coming into place later in the month and early next month. And they had a representatives from Consumer Affairs and VCAT there, which I thought was really good. You know, getting it straight from the horse's mouth, so to say, I think was really important to be able to get their view on, you know, how things are being interpreted and what it meant. Unfortunately, I don't think it went as well as what Consumer Affairs and VCAT would have liked. So anecdotally, and again, obviously we weren't in attendance, but a couple of things that came out of that, and there will be a recording of the event circulated to those who attended, was that there was some questions raised of VCAT and Consumer Affairs around specifics that relate to some of the changes that are coming. And one of those changes, one of the stories that came out of that was around refund of bonds. Refunds of rents where an agent has collected more than a certain amount of rent. So the intention of the changes or the reforms that had come through was that you can't go and have a tenant that's offering more than a month's rent up front. So, you know, when we typically lease a property, they've got to have a bond ready and they've got to have a month's rent ready to go. And you can't have what they're trying to move away from is sweeteners in deals. So, you know, where there's a lot of competition for a rental property and a renter turns around and says, you know, I'm going to offer a little bit more or I'm going to pay 6 months rent in advance. It needs to be an even playing field. So they've outlawed all, you know, significant amounts of rent paid in advance and any offers of over what's being advertised. So that makes sense. You know, the intention of the legislation is certainly there. Unfortunately, Consumer Affairs' understanding of the legislation seems completely different to the intention of the legislation. So when they were asked what happens if a tenant moves into a property, pays a month's rent, as they do when they move in, and then has a windfall, you know, has some additional cash that they just want to go and put towards their rent. And we've had it in the past and we'll probably continue to have it where a tenant, you know, might be going away on holidays for a couple of months and goes, I don't want to have to worry about making my rent payments while I'm away. Here's 3 months rent in advance. So they asked specifically about that question. And to be honest, it seems as though they didn't know how to answer it, which is really concerning given that we're 11 days away from the legislation coming into effect. Their response was, oh, yes, I think you have to refund the balance of the rent that you've received. When they were quizzed further around the fact that we don't have authority to refund money out of a rent trust because we haven't received authority from a renter to do that, and how would that go from an auditing perspective? Again, there was a very nervous response, and they said, we're not.
We'll take that offline, I think was the wording they used.
Yeah, exactly. So I think for me, that highlights a real issue with the way these reforms have been introduced and the way and the speed at which they're coming to market and they're being communicated to the industry. I mean, we're going to lean on Consumer Affairs, who's essentially the enforcement agency, and the agency that's responsible for making sure that the laws that are introduced are actually followed by us, the agents who are administering them. And then also when these things go to VCAT, how do we know if the parties who are responsible don't even know the answers to the question themselves? So look, I'm hoping that we get some clarity over the next week and a half, but it seems unlikely at this stage because it doesn't seem as though they've really got their act together, which is a bit disappointing. A big push to try and announce these rental reform changes, but from an enforcement perspective or even an understanding perspective, it just wasn't there.
So strange to do it. Like having, if someone wants to go and pay their rent in advance, 6 months after moving in or 12 months, that's their prerogative. They can do essentially what they like. It's kind of a similar thing of like the landlord who's got a mortgage over the property goes and pays 6 months worth of mortgage repayments, and the bank going, "I don't know, sorry, we've got to refund that money back." It's like, well, if they want to do that, that's completely up to them to do it. I sometimes think that these changes and these legislations get brought in, and are probably on the similar side why they brought a lot of legislations in on the landlord side or the rental provider side, of thinking that there's people with big pockets full of cash and they want to try and stop that from happening. So, the tenant that comes in and goes, "I'll give you 6 months up front in advance to try and secure a property," that's fine. Like I can understand that part of it, but just legislate it to that point of you can't offer up front, not throughout the tenancy, or or interpret the legislation in different ways. Another one that was brought up was destroying of records. So there was in the legislation that after 3 years we must remove, after a tenant vacates from a property, we must destroy their records. So license, so basically their application form. So everything on the application, delete it and remove it. Question got asked that in 5 years' time, if we were to get audited, we have to keep records for 7 years. If the ATO, which we've had sometimes, we've had government bodies that have contacted us saying, "Hey, Mr. X was, renting the property. Do you have their application? Because we need records, because during the period of time they were renting your property, there's been something happen." Sure. And we're obliged to hand over that. That can happen retrospectively for 7 years. But we're now having to delete data after 3. Then what happens? So we're then breaching federal legislation, federal law, by doing something that's asked at a state level. Again, I don't think that question could get answered.
It also, what also wasn't answered there as well was what happens with tenants or renters who are in properties for more than 3 years. So if you've got a renter that's in a property for 5 years, on year 3, do you have to pull out their file and remove all the personal contact information that you had for them? In which case you then have issues where, you need to pursue a matter against that person at a later stage. If they're currently your client and you don't have the information held on file for them, then how does that work? So I think, again, there's a lot of signs here that this has just been a rushed piece of legislation that's been brought to market because of perhaps messaging or something that the government's trying to achieve without really any thought or industry consultation. Because if there had been any industry consultation, we wouldn't be getting questions like this. And you wouldn't have industry members asking Consumer Affairs representatives at a conference on the 13th of November for legislation that's coming into effect on the 25th of November. It seems a bit ridiculous. But anyway, that's kind of where we're at.
We could go on for a long time. Maybe we'll talk about it at a later date. But let's jump into our first topic, which is we're probably going to spend less time talking about this topic than what we've just spoken about at that recent training session. So the state government has tightened up so this is nothing new. So same information's been around for quite some time. There has been changes along the way. There was when it first was introduced, it was you had to have 3 or none on your statement of information. So for those that don't know what a statement of information is, it is a document that is prepared by the selling agent at the time that the property is advertised for sale. On there, it must have the price on that the property is advertised for. So In Victoria, for those that are watching from interstate, we must have a price on every single one of our residential listings. It cannot be more than a 10% range, or it can also be a singular price. And then you had to provide, back then, 3 comparable sales that were similar sort of configuration: bed, bath, car, land size, property size, sold in a 2K radius of that particular property, and that was enough. What was happening was there was people that were, or agents that were kind of manipulating it in a way, and they were trying to get it in a particular way that would sort of help them, and still trying to get around the underquoting laws that it was sort of brought in for. So what they then introduced was that you could have up to 3. So it didn't have to be exactly 3. So if there was 1 comparable sale, you could use that. If there was 2, you could use that, and so forth. Again, if there was no comparable sales, if it was a unique property, you didn't have to then have a property on there. The new one they've brought in, they're wanting now to tighten up really about the types of property that you're putting in there. So what was happening in some areas where there would be a house that might have a tennis court and a pool that was on there, and a big, large, double-story 5-bedroom house. On the statement information, they would put 5-bedroom houses on there, or 4-bedroom houses on there, but didn't have a pool or a tennis court. So again, they could have lower sale prices to bring their advertised price down, which essentially would be underquoting and all that. So for us in our market, we're blessed with selling in apartment buildings. There's always at least 3 sales in the last 6 months that are similar, or at least 1 sale in the last 6 months that is pretty much identical to what we're advertising. So we're fortunate. It does get a little bit tricky for the housing market, and especially inner city areas where they're now wanting you to look at renovation, if a property's been renovated against not renovated, what level the renovation is. So as agents, we do go and inspect other properties. We do get called in on appraisals, so we probably should have a fair idea on what the quality of that property is. But to read it in its entire, to the actual specifics, it would literally be that as a sales agent, you'd have to walk through every single property in your marketplace, take notes on what that property is, and then track it when it sells to then put it in identical. So, if they're talking renovations, it could be like what type of tiles have been used, or what type of flooring has been used, and then comparing it to that. So it's becoming a little bit harder. It still stays that there's a 10% range or a single figure. It still is up to 3, so it doesn't have to be 3. It can be 1 or 2. So just tightening up of that legislation. We're moving in, and it's always tends to be this. We're moving into a market that is high clearance rates. The market's on the improve. And this is a knock to all the real estate agents that are watching this. Is the reason why this happens, and the reason why governments will go after and make these changes, is because we start advertising, we start promoting on social media, standing at the front of a sold board with the buyer and the vendor saying, "Congratulations, just sold for 200,000 above reserve." Basically means 2 things: you've either underquoted it, or you've got your vendor at a lower price and then sold it for above market. It's just, and it really also makes the buyer feel like shit, because they've just gone, "Well, I've just bought this place. I've paid 200 grand more than what I should have." So like that type of stuff. If a market's running hot and prices go over reserve, great. It's an open market. That's what that's what happens. But when we do get agents that are promoting themselves about how great they are because they sell things above reserve, great. That's what our job is. But you don't have to go and gloat about it, because it just brings attention onto it, and then it creates these issues where if you just quote a property correctly, run a really well campaign, and it sells for a great price, fantastic. Everyone should be happy. And
there's been agents out there that have used that to their advantage, right? So you've had agents in the past that, and like I certainly had this interaction before I was working here with an agent that tried to get me to agree to a lower reserve price, and then build a kicker in for themselves, so a greater amount of commission for any price greater than that reserve. And they did that by underquoting the property. So they underquote the property, they educate, they use the word educate, but they condition the owner to try and bring the property value down in their mind. And I wanted to sell it for 600. No, it's only worth 5, it's only worth 5, it's only worth 5, and then on auction day they sell it for 650. You're beside yourself as a vendor because you go, well, how good's this? This guy's got me 150 grand more. I don't mind paying him an extra 10% for the 150 grand he's got more for me. When in actual fact, the agent knew from the very beginning, or had a fair idea from the very beginning, he was always going to achieve over 600. He's just conditioned the vendor into thinking that they were going to get it a lot less. And it's just like, it's poor practice. And then, like you said, the cherry on the top is the social media posts where they're standing at the front of a board with a big, achieve 200 grand or 150 grand over reserve.
Yep.
It's all ego.
It is.
And that's, and unfortunately, agents are doing it to themselves by doing that. So, yeah, we welcome the changes really to the statement of information because all it's doing is building in additional protections for purchasers and for vendors too.
And there was agents look back 5-6 years ago. There was a huge thing before statement of information came in, and while it came in because of that exact reason, because of people with kickers on there or incentives or performance fees and all this sort of stuff. There's all these great words that we use. And again, like this is probably going to get a huge amount of our audience that are agents, their nose out of joint because they do it.
Yeah.
And there is nothing wrong with a performance fee if you agree up front with the owner at the time of listing it and go, okay, what's the price we're going to do it for and what's that, but not setting it based on the reserve because they can manipulate what that reserve is. And then that then feeds into the buyer side of things because they're trying to quote it for a lower price so they can so they're not working for anyone but themselves as the agents. And that's not what it is. It's like, okay, who are you getting paid by, who's your client and who you're there to service. That should be always the thing. So
yeah, agreed.
Yep. So no, we welcome it. That's fine. Good one. Tick for that.
Just before we move on, how does it compare? So a question without notice. I haven't spoken to you about this before, but how does it compare to other states? Because like you look at properties interstate and they're not like I don't see statement of informations and things like that. I think we, it could be argued that we probably over disclose here and provide too much information to people and don't allow the market itself to kind of determine value. How does that compare to other states where advertising prices and advertising other properties, comparable properties? Does the market or do the regulators in the market leave it up to the consumer, to the purchaser to decide what the property is, or do they have something similar to what we've got here?
You don't even have to go as far as interstate. You just look in the other side of real estate, which is commercial and industrial. They don't have statement informations. They're not obliged to advertise rental prices. They're not obliged to advertise sale prices. They can quote essentially whatever they like. We've had dealings in the past where we've been approached by clients, whether interstate or local or overseas, or any of our landlords that we've been looking at commercial properties and have been told. I remember one which was on Turak Road. We went to an auction. So one of our clients in Singapore asked us to go to an auction on for a shop on Turak Road in South Yarra. He was told that he could buy for $650,000. He was all excited. We're looking at this going, that's like a 11% return on what the current rent was that the person was paying. Like there is no way that this is going to sell for $650,000, but sure, we'll go along. Opening bid $900, ends up selling for 1.4. But got him there, and it was always going to sell for that, and they could literally quote whatever they whatever they liked. So that's even in our backyard. Like you got one side of the property market in the residential space that is so scrutinised. Have to have a statement of information, have to display a price. Even the portals now, if you put on online in the price contact agent, which is fine, you can still use that. It will show up underneath. It'll pick up what the price on the statement of information is and display that price on the advertising anyway. So there's no point having contact agent or price on application because the portals will just grab it from your statement of information and advertise it. Commercial, industrial, no. Just nothing. Like that's, they don't have to do it. New South Wales, I think there is some stuff at the moment around underquoting around there. There's been some agents that have been fined and even suspended for underquoting. Queensland, I haven't looked at this, and this is, and I could be talking out of school, but last I heard of it, in Queensland, if you had a property going to auction, their legislation were that you couldn't actually speak about price to the buyer.
Wow.
So if a buyer walks through a property, and this could have changed. This was I'm going back a couple of years, but if a buyer walked through a property and says to the agent, hey, Michael, what do you think it's worth? Sorry, I can't say the property's going to auction.
Yeah,
And it's like, well, okay, well, can you give me a ballpark? No, sorry, we can't talk price. And that was legislated that if a property was to go to auction, the agent could not put a price or discuss price with the buyer, which just seems ridiculous. But
I think what it does is it makes the consumer be more informed. It forces them to be more informed. They don't have a choice to walk in and be completely uninformed. They have to do their own research, or they risk overpaying or underpaying. I mean, that's just in my mind, that's a free market doing what it.
But you then have to have the agents on the other side being able to then provide the data on the sale prices.
Yeah.
So if they're not then doing that, or it's in Victoria, it's after 3 months of the property that gets sold and settled, that price gets given to the Valuer General, which then becomes public data.
Yeah.
And that's why it gets advertised. So we get a lot of people that are like, oh, please don't disclose price that we sell it for or we buy it for. And we're like, yep, that's fine. We oblige. And then I'll get an email like 6 months later. Why is the price on realestate.com? Take it down. I told you to take it down. It's like, well, like it's actually after 3 months, it's public record, and then the portal just pull it from the Valuer General. So, every state's different.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just I'm not sure if those rules have changed up there in Queensland, but that was one of them that there was. Couldn't discuss price. Some agents in New South Wales, some of the agents that I follow there and watch their thing, the good ones, all show price.
Yep.
So they'll give a price guide. They use singular price a bit more, even for auctions. But
Okay, that's good.
This was a good one. This came in. I've got the media release here. That was sent. Around, and this was on the 15th of October. There was a media release talking about the new rental rights to doing away with the old dreaded double bond.
Yeah, so another surprise announcement. No legislation supporting it yet.
No.
But it's going to affect more than 736,000 households apparently. So very significant benefit.
Yep. Just put it into context. 15th of October. Coming into effect on the 25th of November.
Yep.
So 6 weeks.
Yep.
6 weeks.
Trying to remain as positive as we can about these changes. So the portable rental bond is a really interesting concept, something that we didn't know about 4 weeks ago. But basically, on our reading of it, and again, the details are pretty sparse. No legislation to support it just yet, but we'll have to know in the next 11 days. Is that it allows a tenant or a renter to transfer their bond from one property to another without having to come up with the money. So what happens in practice is if you're applying for a new property, you have to come up with a first month's rent and bond. Now, bond is 1 month's rent unless it's more than a certain amount of rent. I think it's about $900 a week.
Yep.
You can charge 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever you want to charge. But
Yep.
for the majority of rentals in Victoria, your bond is 1 month's rent plus you need to come up with 1 month. So, say for example, your monthly rental is $2,000 a month or thereabouts. You're going to have to find $4,000 to secure the property. You need to pay your bond. You need to pay your first month's rent. What this legislation goes to do, or what this announcement goes to do, is allow a renter to move their bond from another property that they've already got, because the bond sits with the RTBA. So we receive the bond, we pay it off to the RTBA as soon as we can, once the bond form's been completed. And then at the end of the tenancy, there's a review of the condition of the property to the original condition report. And then we determine with the renter whether there's any drawdowns from the bond for repairs and things like that. If it comes to a dispute, it goes to VCAT. What this allows the renter to do is draw down that bond before the end of the tenancy and transfer it to a new property. So before the outgoing property manager has an opportunity to complete an outgoing condition report, check the condition of the property, put a claim on the bond to the tenant, they've already transferred that bond over to another property that they've been approved for. And the intention here is that apparently there's a thing called the dreaded double bond. I've never heard of it. You've been in real estate a lot longer than I have, Anthony, but I've never heard of someone talking about the dreaded double bond. But apparently it's a thing that people have to try and find an extra month's rent to pay the bond on a property that they're moving into before they even get the bond back on the other property. Now, it creates a few issues. The most obvious one being the bond's now gone on the previous property. So if you need to be able to claim that bond for repairs, often you'll have renters that short pay rent leading into the end of the tenancy. So, we've got unpaid rental amounts and things. We no longer have a bond at the RTBA that we can claim on. What the government said that they will do to counteract that is that they're actually going to have a government-funded bond that sits there that us as agents will be able to claim on if we need to. So, for example, if the tenant has damaged a few walls, a couple of $100 worth of repairs, and they've short paid their rent by $500, that $700 we need to claim can actually come from the government, and then the renter enters an agreement with the government to pay back the government that $700 on a payment plan. Now, in a state where we don't have money to fix potholes on roads and all sorts of stuff, I don't know. I was pretty baffled to read that this was even a thing that was being thought about. Yeah. And it just sounds like another massive headache for property managers. Like I said, try and remain as positive as I possibly can with these sorts of things. But this is one that I really don't see any benefit. I see a lot more disadvantage and a huge amount more work that's going to get created for property managers as a result.
Yep. With
very, very little benefit to renters. It's really just a timing of funds. I mean, I think about it in my own situation. If I was renting a property and I wanted to move into a new property and I didn't have a couple of months rent in savings to be able to apply for a new property, knowing that I'm probably going to get most of my bond, or if not all of my bond, back when I vacate the previous property, then I've got bigger problems than the double bond thing. There's some real finance cash flow issues there, right? And obviously, cost of living and all that other stuff contributes. But again, it's one of these things that's kind of come without any consultation, taken a huge amount of people by surprise, and it sounds like the administration of it's going to be more costly than anything else, really.
There's a bit in it. There's that, like what you were saying, so that the government guarantees it. I'd go one step further and being like, the only reason why the dreaded double bond is an issue is because it is taking so long to hear cases at VCAT.
Yeah.
So we've had it both with friends and family that have rented, and also with the guys in the team, our PMs that are waiting years to hear a VCAT claim. So they do literally have money tied up because they're not getting heard at VCAT sooner. So if we put in we go through a property and there's damages, as you said, and it could be as little as, it could be, well, not a little, but, it could be $300-400 worth of repairs, right? Some damaged walls and whatever. We could take up to like 12, 18 months, 2 years to hear that case. So we've put an application in or we've asked the tenant's like, nah, I'm not, or the renter, I'm not paying it, take me to VCAT, right? Yeah. Sure. Go put an application to VCAT. That bond then gets tied up at VCAT because no one can access it.
And just to clarify, the entire amount gets tied up, not just the amount in dispute, the entire amount gets tied up. Yeah.
So let's say it's 2 years, and we've had cases where it's been like 3 years before we've got a case heard. That renter could have moved 3 times, right? Yeah. So that part I get it. But also it's because we have got such a backlog of cases that just aren't getting heard and aren't getting through, that's creating this. So again, it's a problem. They've created a solution out of a problem that shouldn't even be there to begin with.
Is that because, sorry to interrupt, but is that because there's too many factors in claiming a bond? There's more factors now than there was in claiming a bond previously, or the system is just too clogged with the number of cases that are being, like, what do you think is the cause is there?
A bit of both, I think. Yeah. I think it's a bit of both. I think it's definitely, what I've seen is that people are a lot quicker to go to VCAT than what they once were.
Yeah.
So both sides, and this is not, this isn't like just targeting renters. I think rental providers are just the same.
Yeah.
They're so quick to go, I'll go to VCAT. or I'll go to VCAT. And you probably see it in owners corporation too, right? Everyone's just so quick to like get on the defensive, and this has been since COVID. Get on the defensive, guard up, take me to VCAT.
Yeah, not getting what I want.
So, whereas before, a $200-300 repair could get negotiated. There's also been that the tenant has the ability to apply for their bond back within 10 days or up to 10 days. So if you don't make a claim, they get it automatically back. So that's now triggered property managers to put claims in.
Yeah.
So again, another thing that's been created that's just creating backlog. So yeah, there's multiple parts to it, but I think it's one, people are very quick to go to VCAT. Two, introducing the tenant being able to claim their bond back within 10 days has forced property managers to make claims to VCAT. And then the other thing too, just with our PMs, I asked them, like, when this media release came out, how often when they're speaking to a prospective, renter to moving in, do they get, oh, I'm going to struggle to pay a bond on this, or can I, can you give me a couple of weeks or whatever with bond? We have never had someone say they can't pay a bond or they can't afford to pay a bond. So is it just legislation because it's a pretty thing and it's got a nice little double bond and it's a nice little play on words, or is it actually a real thing? Now we manage 850 properties, so I think we've got a fairly good sample size of what the market is, and a cross section of the market. We manage properties at all different types, right? All the way from we manage properties that are in houses that are worth $6 million, and we've got studio apartments that are worth $150,000.
Yep.
Across all that, we don't have, or we've never had that as a concern. So that would be just my point on that. So yeah,
I think it's also one of those things that's been used as a previously it's been used as a way of us vetting applications to a certain extent as well. And I know, again, this is one of those things that we can't even ask for, I don't think, anymore. I haven't been in rentals for a few years now, but I don't believe we're even able to ask for bank statements anymore.
Yeah, no.
To be able to see transaction history. So that for us would be it used to be a red flag. If someone says, oh, I'm struggling to pay the first month's rent and bond, well, you can't pay the first month's rent and bond, probably no point renting the property because we're going to be dealing with this the entire way through.
Yep.
Whereas now, again, we've kind of removed another layer, another protection that sits there for owners and for the property managers as well. Because ultimately, like, the property managers are the ones that are going to have to spend a huge amount of time administering this work. Yeah. So look, we'll see how that goes. I haven't seen any legislation. It's supposed to come into effect on the 25th of November.
Consumer Legislation Amendment Bill 2025, apparently, to establish the scheme. It's well, we'll wait and see.
We'll see. We can give you an update on it in a future podcast if we have a portable rental bond, and we'll see.
That's the one last thing before we move on that. You made the point before about the state's got some mounting debt issues.
Yeah.
We're now creating essentially more of that by this. So, a $2,000 bond, thousands at dispute. We go to VCAT. I'd like to see if tenants actually rock up to VCAT. It'll be interesting because, they've already moved on. Are they going to care about that?
No longer there.
That $1,000. So that's going to be it. What does it look like then paying it back? Is it a lump sum up front? Is it are they going to do like what they do with land tax and just jump into your account and pull $1,000 out? But the other side of this, and what I think people got to look at is like, okay, so we're making this change. What are the effects on a renter who is going to use the dreaded double bond, who's also a taxpayer in this state? What does it have on the other side of it, where if this does, there's 736 households that this is going to impact. Take a percentage, take whatever you like of that. If there's another couple of $1 million that is outstanding, that affects the state's bottom line, right? How does the payment plan look? Is there going to be interest that's going to be charged on that amount? How are they going to go after it? Is the state government going to send out debt collectors to collect this money back? So they're creating another expense line in their budget, which, again, the Victorian taxpayer who is renting might look at this and go, great, win for me. I don't have to worry about paying a bond. But while it's happening here, what's going on over here on the other side of it? Does it increase taxes? Does it increase the cost of living? Does that then get affected to it? So I think you've always got to look at these things on, if you're a renter in this position, yes, great if it's going to assist with the dreaded double bond, but also then what's it going to affect society in general if there's $100 million worth of, which can very well blow out quickly, right?
Easily.
Over a couple of years, if there's 736 households that are going to get affected by this over a course of a period, like I don't know.
And it'll be interesting to see what the take up is. Like, again, it's out there. We'll see what the take up's like, and see if it's something that people want to use, or if it's just one of these schemes that's there. And
wouldn't you take it?
Yeah,
you would. Like, you take it, right? You're not having to worry about it. Like, if you're moving to a property, like we talked, like, you're paying $450 a week.
Yep.
$19.55 a month.
Yep.
Right? That's what it is. You move from one property to another, and it's the same amount. You got two options. You either pay $2,000 out of your savings, or you take this, which is not going to cost you anything.
Yeah, fair.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, on the way out, and we had a situation. So now we'll talk real things here. We had a tenant that recently vacated a property.
Yep.
Didn't get the property cleaned because there was a release transfer, and they weren't happy on the condition that they took the property over in.
Yep.
And supposedly were told from our office that, don't worry, you don't have to get the property cleaned.
Yep.
Right? Good win. Missing some stuff, but let's just say it's like that.
Yeah.
So that tenant vacates. Now, it's $600.
Yep.
That's gonna cost. Now, goes to VCAT. We get the $600 for cleaning because we had a cleaning receipt instead of cleaning at the beginning of the tenancy. So there's $600. That's now all of a sudden that is sitting there. So then that's how does that work? And then how does that go? Does that then tenant? How long over the period of course?
Interest-free loan of $1 a week for the
like the old parking fine ones, right?
Well, and you don't, and again, there's no detail in there on how that would be administered. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's interest-free money. Why wouldn't you take it?
Absolutely, I would.
Yeah. Okay. Well. And let's see how it plays out.
Congratulations to all the property managers out there. That is, the portable bond will be the 150th rental fairness reform delivered under this Labor government. So that's actually that's come straight from their media release.
Is that from there as well? So so 150 reform, and I think that's
huge.
It's a milestone. I don't know if it's a milestone property managers to be celebrating, but it is absolutely a milestone.
But
it's a huge number of changes to stomach across the last 4 or 5 years, really, because it started in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
It's been 4 or 5 years since these reforms. On average, 30 rule changes or 30 changes to the way in which property managers do their job every year. And you can see the speed at which they're coming and the amount of notice that's being given, the amount of education that's being provided by the parties that are responsible to provide the education, and even just the doubt from their end. It's an interesting approach. It's not something that we've ever seen, and even Joe, who's been in the industry for 40 years, hasn't seen changes like this ever before.
Yep.
Certainly not at the speed. He was around when the Residential Tenancies Act was written, and that was a big change. But he even says that was nothing compared to what's going on now. So. We'll see. We'll certainly see how things play out over the next little bit.
Yep. Great. All right. Moving on.
Owners Corporation. So there's been some media coverage over the last few weeks about some changes that have happened in Owners Corporation. So obviously we've got the Owners Corporation Act changes that are coming early next year, or towards the end of this year and early next year. There's some things in there that I think we certainly needed. The OC Act's now close to 20 years old. It needs some updates. There was some revisions that came in 2018 and also 2021 that changed the Owners Corporation Act. But there was a decision that was made by a VCAT member back in July or August this year, which I think caught a lot of people by surprise in the industry. And I think that's now beginning to have a bit of an impact on the way owners corporations are approaching things. So at a really high level, I won't go into the details, specific details of the case, but essentially what happened was there is an owners corporation that has brought another owners corporation within the same development to VCAT. And the defending OC has said that the one who made the application actually wasn't permitted to make the application because they hadn't made a special resolution. Now, I'm paraphrasing here and probably oversimplifying it. But they didn't have the power to be able to bring that action against the other owners corporation because they hadn't obtained a special resolution. Now, a special resolution in Victoria requires one of two things. Either you have 75% of lot owners vote in favour of a particular motion. So you've got ordinary resolutions that just require a majority. 75% are required for a special resolution, or if you get more than 50% of the owners to agree to a resolution, and you wait 29 days for that decision to be ratified, so it goes from interim to final, then that also marks a special resolution as well. Now, that's a huge hurdle. We currently get special resolutions passed for changes of rules, changes of material changes to the owner's corporation. So if you wanted to paint the outside of a building from grey to pink, or you wanted to significantly change the operation of the common property, you need a special resolution. But to get a special resolution every time you want to take legal action against another party is a serious hurdle to taking action and protecting the interests of the owner's corporation. So what came out of this case, and I'll read this because I don't want to get this part wrong, is that where is it here? Is that the special resolution is required for cases, for proceedings that involve, the special resolution is required for proceedings other than debt, damages claim, equitable relief, or where the amount is $100,000 or less. So what that essentially means is where an owner's corporation wants to take legal action against another party, and it can be anyone, it can be a lot owner, it can be another owner's corporation, it can be an external party that doesn't relate to debt. So this is normal debt recoveries. That's not covered by this. Doesn't relate to a damages claim. So someone causing a financial impact on the owner's corporation, or equitable relief, which is linked, or the amount is less than $100,000, then you don't need a special resolution. So, debt recovery matter, which is probably the most common case that we hear at VCAT. Lot owner hasn't paid the levies. It goes through the whole process: fee notice, final fee notice, legal letter, application to VCAT, debt recovery. Don't need a special resolution for that. Thank goodness. Same where an owner's corporation has incurred a cost from a lot owner. So an example of that might be a garbage chute that's been blocked by a lot owner because they've gone and put some building materials down the chute. It's blocked the garbage chute. We've had to engage the building manager's had to go and engage an external contractor to come in. It's cost $500 to unblock the chute. That cost is passed on to the lot owner. Lot owner refuses to pay it, but there's clear evidence that it's their responsibility to. You can bring action at VCAT to be able to do that. And similarly, and where that recovery that we're trying to seek is less than $100,000, we don't need a special resolution. However, what the implication of this case is where that cost is greater than $100,000, which doesn't really happen very often. But if, for example, they caused $105,000 worth of damage to the garbage chute. So same example as this. Someone's gone and put bricks down a garbage chute and destroyed the entire chute for the building. It's $110,000 worth of damage that's been done to the building. You would need a special resolution to be able to take that lot owner to VCAT or the magistrate's court, depending on the jurisdiction and value, which means you'd have to call a general meeting or issue a ballot out to lot owners and request that everybody responds, or at least 75% of people respond in favour, or 50%, and then wait 29 days to do it. Now that's a huge hurdle for an OC, right? Like you want to try and get something of that scale done, particularly in an owner's corporation that's a bit cash strapped and doesn't necessarily have the money to be able to pay $100,000 or more up front. That's a huge problem. So you could face a situation where an owner's corporation has to raise a special levy just to cover that particular cost while they're waiting for the whole process to be followed. But more concerningly, because again, that's probably quite rare that sort of thing happens, but more concerningly is it means that any claims at VCAT that don't relate to money, so no damages claim, no equitable relief, no debt claim, and under 100 grand, would also require a special resolution. And that for me is probably the most concerning part of this change, and where I think a lot of the media coverage kind of hit a bit of a nerve with a few people. So what it means is that if an owner is to breach an OC rule and you issue them a breach notice, which is what we are required to do, then we issue them with a final breach notice. So they've got 28 days to rectify the breach under the breach notice. They fail to rectify, we issue them a final breach notice. So they've got a final 28 days to be able to rectify the breach. If they've not remedied the breach over that period of 56 days, then we're free, or we have been free, to make an application to VCAT to force them to rectify that breach. So where that's worked for us in the past, I won't mention the building, but we had a situation where a lot owner decided to construct another bedroom on their balcony. Very visible building, glass balconies, so you could see it from the street. They've made a room out of timber on their balcony, turned it into another bedroom. I think they might have been renting it out. It was an opportunity, right? Like, why not?
Value add.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly, that's right. So we went down the process that we know. Issued them a breach notice. You can't do that. One, because it's a fire safety issue. You've got a timber structure on the balcony that was enclosing an area. So if a fire had have started on the balcony, it could have led to death or ball.
Yeah.
Secondly, it was an alteration to the building without permission. And thirdly, it was a visible structure from the facade of the building, or from the exterior of the building. So you could look up, to whatever level it was on, and you could see this room that had been constructed on the balcony.
Yeah.
Breach notice was issued. No action was taken. Final breach notice was issued. No action was taken. Application to VCAT, and we got orders to have the structure removed.
Yeah.
The VCAT member actually gave orders for us to gain access to the property and have a contractor remove the structure, which wasn't actually needed in the end, but we actually needed to get access to the property to get rid of all the timber that still remained there. So the building manager actually helped facilitate that work to happen.
Yeah.
And that's the process working, right? Because no one wants a third bedroom built on a balcony of a large apartment building. Because then, if it happens with one, others quickly follow, right?
Yep.
So yeah, this change is not a change. This precedent
in that case, you would have to get a special resolution for that to go to VCAT.
Yeah. Which again, it's not impossible, and I think if you're communicating it to owners effectively around what the concern is, then you likely get a response. The issue that you've got is on a building like that, and again, that building's a really good example. It's 300 odd lots, so 300 apartments. At a normal AGM, we're lucky to get 15 or 20 people to attend. We've issued ballots out in the past, and you're very lucky to even get a 10 or 20% response rate. To reasonably expect that 75% of lot owners are going to respond, let alone respond in favour of resolution, even if you've provided all the information, it's not. It's very unlikely that you're going to get a special resolution done.
Could go the other way. You don't get a special resolution, and it fails, and everyone's like, "Oh, great, I can do that." And all of a sudden, you've got 100 people that have got an extra bedroom built out on their balcony.
Yeah,
renting it out.
Yeah,
and that's how buildings can go. Can go to shit real quick, right? Like they can deteriorate so quickly when you have that type of stuff happen. Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah, exactly. So, like I said, there's been quite a lot of media about it. VCAT they're pretty good with this sort of stuff. Now, it was a vice president of VCAT who ordered that, so put that order together. I would be interested to see how that one gets addressed by VCAT over the next 6 or 12 months, because I think you'll see, given the amount of coverage that's happening, that there probably will be some sort of communication that comes from VCAT.
Has there been anything since that? Because that article was in the Age,
Yes,
so decent, one of the big newspapers.
Yeah.
Has there been anything in industry that's happened? Did anyone discuss that? You may have. Did you have the SCA conference? Was that before or after?
It wasn't commented there. So one of the solicitors that we work with wrote a really good article about it, and I think he was actually quoted in the Age as well.
Yeah.
So it has to do with Section 18 of the Act. So Section 18 is where it references bringing matters to court if you're not getting the resolution. And the hope is within the industry that gets addressed as part of these reforms that are coming through. So I believe there's been a submission, or one of the mini submissions to the panel that's looking at the OC Act review, is that there's an update to Section 18 just to tighten up the language in there. Because again, with any piece of legislation where there's sections that are open to interpretation, it does leave it open for certain members and judges to make decisions that are based on their interpretation of the wording of the Act. So hopefully there's a little bit of a tightening up there, and just setting out the rules around what is required to bring action at various courts, and hopefully sense prevails here, because if not, then it's going to get really difficult to enforce breach notices. And really, like the number of breach notices that make their way to VCAT is pretty minor. From a percentage of the breach notices that we issue that want to end up a VCAT, it'd be less than 1%.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Make it there. Because most people, when they realise that they're doing something that's in breach of the OC rules, realise that it's not that they're being told off for breaking a rule. It's because they probably weren't aware of the fact that the rules were there in the first place, and two, that they're there for the betterment of the community, right?
Yeah.
Like, rules are developed not to control people, but to give people a guideline on what you need to have a harmonious community in a building. Again, the example of the construction on a balcony is a really good example of that. But I think it's but in those rare cases where people dig their heels in and say, no, I'm not doing anything, to not have the power to easily go to VCAT and have that adjudicated properly is a real concern.
And I think that I think one of the common ones here is people blocking the bin chute. That's a pretty common one, and like they get breached and stuff like that on that there, and they get fined and stuff. And I think people are pretty silly. I shouldn't have chucked stuff down. Like the common ones, like throwing coat hangers and stuff down bin chutes and blocking it and stuff like that. So I think most people, and even in that case there they mentioned, great, that they did what they needed to do, and it worked. The breach notice worked. But it's an interesting one. I wonder if they brought that further, if they challenged that order at the magistrates. Was there any mention of that in the?
I think it has to go Supreme after that.
Or Supreme, yeah.
Yeah, I think it has to go all the way to Supreme Court to challenge a
VCAT hearing.
Yeah.
VCAT order.
Yeah.
Yeah, well then you'd almost encourage that to happen, because then that sets the precedent. You don't want those orders being then used in the next case and stuff like that. So yeah,
agreed.
I'm interested to see the OC space and what the legislation changes that happen. And there's obviously been a lot of talk about it. There hasn't been much else that's come through.
Not really. One of the things. So I was talking to someone from New South Wales during the week, who's been in the legal space for a number of years there, and been involved in the various iterations of the Act. And it seems as though a lot of what we have been doing in Owners Corporation definitely copies the Strata Act up in New South Wales, because New South Wales was the first jurisdiction to have a strata title property, and Brisbane's already started to follow, or Queensland started to follow a lot of the reform that New South Wales has had. New South Wales have started talking about things about better controls around managers, removing commissions, all those sorts of things that are happening there. And when discussing with this person from New South Wales, it seems as though there's a lot there that we could pick up and drop in our Act that would just help tighten things up, and also just make it a lot easier to operate within an owners corporation. So one of the ones that I'd really, really like to see, and I'm hoping that it comes through, is the shift of having unanimous resolutions for things like sales of property. So you've got properties at the moment that want to sell. The majority of the owners want to sell, but currently you need a unanimous resolution for the property to be put on the market, for the whole owners corporation to be put on the market. So that creates a barrier, and it gives an opportunity to one or two owners in there to be able to kind of dig the heels in and go, no, I'm going to be the resistor, because you need 100%. You need a unanimous resolution to be able to be successful here. Whereas in New South Wales, it's only 75. So, it's a flip side of what we were just talking about. They need a special res. If you get a special resolution up, you get 75% of lot owners. That's a fair representation of where people are at. You're always going to have one or two people, that 1 or 2% that are going to dig the heels in and make life difficult for you. Well, it removes that. It removes that resistance. So what that does is, from a development perspective, particularly when we keep, banging on about having a housing crisis and not having enough housing, it allows us to effectively repurpose the sites that we've got at the moment that are being underutilised. We know of one, a really good one in South Melbourne or St Kilda Road, that, should be repurposed. It's not, large land area, should be going multi-level on it, got the ability to be able to go multi-level on it, but there's, because of resistance, it's not going to get there. Whereas if that resistance is removed, it helps push things through and move things along.
Yep.
And then you're able to get better utilisation of the land and the sites that we've got there, and build higher density housing, which is what we're all trying to work towards, right? And better quality, higher density housing in the areas that you want to be in, rather than the urban sprawl and keep pushing it further and further out.
Yep.
So yeah,
absolutely. That one we welcome.
Yeah,
definitely. There's a couple of sites that we know up and down, St Kilda Road, Queens Road, even that there's like one owner, two owners that are digging their heels in blocks of 30, 40, 50 units that are just like, no, not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Which you don't want to move someone. I think in a couple of cases they're even investment properties, so they don't even live in those properties. But like, nah, I'm not moving. I want more money. Like, so yeah.
And often it's not because they don't want to move, because they're comfortable there, because they know the building's costing them more to maintain. It's getting surrounded by high-rise development, so you can't argue the amenity thing, because it's not there. It's often because they're holding out because they're waiting for the the top dollar, or they're thinking by being the last one to hold out. It's like that image you see where there's the house in the middle of the freeways because the person refused to sell the block of land.
Well,
dug the heels in.
So there was one in Victoria that did that. So the farm, big parcel of land, sat in the middle of a development, developed all the way around it. The family got offered silly money to sell it. Nah, I'm not going anywhere. He sold it for 10% of what the offer was that he had from the developers, because basically the land became useless.
Yeah.
Because he was then restricted to how much land how much they could be redeveloped. So sometimes that offer that you do get at the time is better than what you're going to get. And in a lot of cases, these offers that these developers are bringing at 2-3 times, and they need to be that. They need to be 2 to 3 times what your market rate is. But thinking that you're going to get 6 times or 8 times or 10 times what of the market value is, it's a fantasy land.
That's
right?
Greed. Yeah,
exactly.
I think that's the issue.
Yeah.
But so look, hopefully that happens. There'll be a few other bits and pieces that come, but I think they'll start drip feeding us information towards later in the year, early next year.
Mm-hmm.
The panel is due to deliver their findings at the end of the month to Parliament, and then drafting of legislation. So I'm looking forward to a couple of interesting press releases like we've seen on the rental side of things.
Love a media release.
Yeah.
Rapid fire to finish off with.
Yes.
Land tax. There was there's some stuff being spoken about.
Yep.
We've heard that the state government will now starting to send out debt collectors to claim to get their land tax. They have there's been situations and confirmed where they will go into your savings account, and if there is money there, that they'll take it directly out of your savings account. And the other one that I heard as well is they will approach, if you've got a loan over the property, they will speak to your bank, and if the bank turns around and they ask the bank, is this person mortgaged to the limit, or capacity that they could take on more. And if the answer is no, they can have more, they will then increase your loan by that amount. And there was a guy that had a $48,000 land tax bill and got $48,000 taxed onto his mortgage.
Wow.
Because he didn't pay his land tax bill. So that's a really, one, scary, but two, a really interesting thing that we're seeing is that they're like the overreach on this. Like everyone that owns an investment property's probably got a land tax notice. Some that have got them have received some quite substantial land tax notices, but now to be going into particularly into your accounts and even just adding it to the mortgage.
One thing on land tax. Remember that 2 years ago we were told a 2-year COVID levy on land tax.
That's 2 years ago.
2 years. We've had two calendar years of COVID levies being applied to.
Oh, good. So we know more.
So, in theory, we should see land tax come down next year.
Jan 1, reduction in land tax across the board.
We should
heard it here first.
Yes. I'm not going to be holding my breath. And I think it just goes back to what we were saying earlier. When you're spending more money than what you're receiving, I can't see.
We paid all that stuff on the credit card during COVID.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, if you're a realist, I'm not going to say a pessimist. If you're a realist, I think just look at the P&L. Yep. I'm an accountant, so like you look at the P&L. If you're collecting more than what you're paying out, then if you're paying out more than what you're collecting, there's only one way to fix that.
Yep. And then tonight we should be wearing tuxedos.
We should. Yeah, we actually should. That'll be good.
We are nominated for a couple of awards.
Yes, we are. Yeah, so we've got the SCA awards tonight. So it's the first time that we've been nominated in the SCA awards. So the team really drove that process this time around. I suppose we certainly could be a lot better at celebrating the awards and things that we do, both from the real estate side and the Owners Corporation side. But the team are really keen to try and get some momentum on the SCA awards. So this evening, I'm really, really proud to be able to say that we're nominees and finalists for 2 awards for tonight's ceremony. One of them is a personal award for Jorge. Mm-hmm. So Jorge is nominated and a finalist for Strata Manager of the Year for Victoria, which is really, really exciting and absolutely well deserved for him to be finalist and hopefully the winner. But we'll find out tonight. I did ask him to go and prepare his speech. So.
I was going to say, because if he doesn't have a speech prepared, and I'm not sure if they allow speeches, the real estate ones that own, but he could be very dangerous with a microphone. He's the last person that will ever be on this podcast, because it'll be entertaining, but geez, it would be, he'd be saying some things.
We need to get him on. So Jorge, and then the team is nominated for Medium Strata Management Business of the Year as well, which I'm stoked about. Like I never expected 6 years after we started Owners Corporation to be nominated for an award, let alone jumping over the small strata management business and going straight to medium. So I haven't prepared anything to say tonight, but I probably should put something down. But I think I'll be as shocked as I was when we were announced as finalists if we genuinely do win.
Kanye West it?
I'm not going to Kanye West. No, I'm definitely not going to Kanye West. And I think I say shocked because the growth and the support that we've had from our clients and our team to get to this point has been so amazing. And it's at times it's almost felt a little bit surreal. But tonight's a real opportunity for the team to kind of just like let their hair down, celebrate, irrespective of what the outcome is. I'm proud of each and every one of them, and they've all been huge contributions to the success. So, looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a good night. They're always a fun night, especially being the industry ones are always a little bit better. And being a independent businesses that we are, it's great to be recognised at that level. There's a lot of awards that if you're part of franchise and stuff like that, they'll put on, and they're very insulated in their little bubble. But I think being when it's industry and it's everyone, I think they hold a little bit more weight. But I mentioned it to you guys in the meeting the other day. Huge achievement, and you guys should be super proud, regardless of if you win or not. just to be finalists in these is incredible. So, goes to all the work that you've done and the team's doing to keep pushing through. And like you said, 6 years to be nominated as finalists, to jump, like I said, to basically jump a category in terms of size. Again, huge achievement. So, looking forward to it. Hopefully, hopefully, for Jorge too, great achievement for him. So, yeah,
Great.
I think that's it from us.
I think so. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you in episode 3.
See you then.
Thanks.